Welcome to the Spirit of a Badass, where we celebrate stories of courage, hope, and resiliency. I'm your host, Alecia Jacobson.
Hello, badasses, and welcome to the podcast today. I'm just going to jump right in. I am here today with Carla, or as many people know her, Dr. Carla Pursnani, or Dr. C. Carla is an empowerment coach, podiatrist, a mom, a wife, and a podcaster. And today we are going to talk about when high achieving meets setback. Welcome, Carla.
Thanks for having me on the show.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good. So tell us a little bit about you and maybe what you're excited about right now.
Ooh, what I'm excited about right now is building my podcast, building my coaching business. They're a lot of fun. I love meeting people. In the podcast I meet other badasses like yourself who are doing amazing things in the world. And it's just great conversation with other creative, forward-focused people.
Awesome. And who do you like to work with?
Leaders, creatives, people that inspire others, people that are inspired by life, and essentially other badasses who don't let life keep them down.
Yes, that is always get back up. Stay down for a little bit, but get back up when you can. All right. So Carla, you wear some pretty badass roles. You are a doctor and you were a junior Olympian for swimming. So it's obvious that you're a person who goes all in, and you've also had some health issues that have impacted you in a big way. How do you handle both of those things? Because I've worked with a lot of, people who are former collegiate athletes, and when there is a setback health-wise where you're not able to physically do the things you once did, it causes some issues and you kind of have to grapple with that. And you, I'm assuming, chose to pick yourself back up. So tell us kind of how you did that and tell us a little bit about more the junior Olympian part of you too.
Well, the junior Olympian part, it actually gave me chills because that was quite a while ago. But yeah, being a part of the Junior Olympics was really cool. I had a pretty difficult childhood. It was kind of traumatic, and it was the sports that got me through it. And especially swimming, you get a lot of real good time to be with yourself mentally, because if you're in a soccer game or a football game, you got a lot going on around you. You have people passing you the ball. You got to make the goals. There's constant interaction. When you're swimming and you're in a pool, it's just you and your head's down, you're in the water. So you're with yourself a lot. And when you practice, you have a lot of time to think about things and get through them. So being in the Junior Olympics was very cool.
And how old were you then?
Gosh, I was probably 14, 15.
Okay. So in your teens, and then after high school, you went on to pursue becoming a doctor. So the mentality that you hold is very high achieving. There's a different mentality there. You wanted to kind of rise to the top. And with that mentality paired with some physical setbacks, how did you manage that?
The physical setbacks, those are intense. First, find a great therapist. Sometimes you need great therapy to heal. And you find great coaches, because great coaches, they don't let you be a victim. They hold you to a higher standard. And when you're ready to quit and you don't feel like you can go on, they remind you that you can. They remind you that you're a badass and you can do this. And life is hard and sucks sometimes, but you can't give up, especially once you have kids. You just can't give up. You got to get creative. I know a few times you've mentioned the setbacks I have. Would you like me to go into what some of those setbacks were?
Yeah. Could you please?
So there was the childhood trauma, growing up in a very challenged family, which pretty much led to some attachment issues and a lot of mental hurdles that some people don't have. But around 2016, I had a series of injuries that left me with chronic permanent pain. At the time, we had moved to California. I had reduced my medical practice to just going to skilled nursing facilities because that allowed me to work my schedule around my kids, because what I wanted most of all was to be a mom and to be there for my kids. And then what happened was I got a couple of nerve injuries. First, I bit on a plum seed. It sounds so benign and so silly, but it's left me with permanent facial pain, like in this area here. And it's an invisible disability / ability, so to speak, because for probably about 7 years now, I've had constant burning. Right now, my face burns. And when it first happened for the first year, the pain was probably first few months, 10 out of 10. I mean, I could not function. And then it got down to a 7, but then that was it. And it was coupled with a lot of other very intense issues. Going to doctor after doctor. I probably went to about 17 doctors. And then finally realized, what are you doing? You're a doctor yourself. You know what this is. It's called something called complex regional pain syndrome. I had studied about it. I'd treated other patients with it. And I finally said, I'm just going to take matters into my own hands, and started treating it myself. One of those big components was therapy, just talk therapy. I don't know why it's so magical, but literally just talking to someone and just self-care. But as I was healing from that, I thought, I need a goal. If I don't have a goal, I'm not going to make it through this. And I had 2 little kids at the time. They were in 1st and 3rd grade. And I had done some triathlons back when I was in high school and early years of college. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a triathlon. And that was a big thing because once I hit medical school, I was basically a sedentary person. I mean, you're studying all day, you're sitting in class all day, you're not doing much exercise. So I had gained a ton of weight. I'd had a couple of kids. I was not physically fit in any way. And so to say, oh, I'm going to do a triathlon, my face is burning. I mean, that was a pretty badass goal, I think. So I start training, I start riding my bike, and not too long after, my bike flips over, rear tire over the front tire. And sometimes the negative aspect of badass is you don't take a proper survey of what's going on. So the bike was completely mangled. The gears did not work. They were all smashed up. I was still 10 miles from home. And I was like, oh yeah, this is probably going to hurt a little bit tomorrow, but I'm fine. You know, the wheels turn. I'm just going to bike home. Didn't call for help. You know, it had tiny little scrapes on my hands, but I'm like, that's not a big deal. So I biked home, got the bike fixed, and just kept biking. And slowly my right arm got more and more numb. And I'm like, it's nothing. It's nothing. I'm just going to suck it up. I've got this goal. And it was helping me. It was helping me mentally get through the other injury. Finally, when my arm was almost completely numb, I'm like, you know, doctors make the worst patients. I've got to take a real look at myself and get some help. So went out, got some good chiropractors, and managed to get it to a point that was tolerable. But when you have these setbacks, you have to get creative. I could not ride a racing bike anymore, but I really wanted to complete this goal. And it became clear that I wasn't going to be able to do a normal triathlon. So what I did was I found a bike that I could ride. It wasn't a racing bike. I felt a little silly with my little non-racing bike in these events with the people on their racing bikes that looked really much more badass than me. And I found a triathlon, and I'm going to publicly mention this. Well, I have publicly mentioned it before, but it was tiny. It was a kids triathlon. I mean, we swam, I think 100 meters in a lake, which is essentially, if you imagine a swimming pool, it's just going down and back twice. Very tiny distance. Although it wasn't a lake, which was freezing cold and you had to use a wetsuit. And then it was just 3 miles of a bike and 1 mile of a run, which I mostly walked. But I have to say that was the biggest accomplishment, the accomplishment I'm the most proud of, frankly. Because if you know my history up until that point, if you know what I had been through, that I was overweight, out of shape, dealing with this facial burning, you know, dealing with the pain in my neck, my shoulder, my back, and just sucking it up and going through it. And I'd never been in a swimming in a wetsuit in a lake before, which was much more intense than I thought. I mean, I did that 100 meters, and when I got out, I could barely stand up. And ended up going to a neurologist after that, who told me, yeah, you know, when you're in a wetsuit, it's constricting your chest and you're breathing faster and it's cold. And for some reason, some people get nauseous and dizzy when they don't wear earplugs in the water. So I didn't know all of this when I first did this. So when I got out, I could barely run. I was falling over. My husband was freaking out. He's like, I think you should stop. There's something wrong. I'm like, I am not stopping. I said I was going to do this and I'm going to do it. And Then 6 months later, I did the bigger one. Not the full triathlon, but I did the one where you're swimming half mile in the ocean. Again, in a wetsuit, because I don't know if anybody has been in the ocean in the Pacific Northwest, but it is cold. Even in a wetsuit, it is freezing cold. And you've got the seals and the otters swimming next to you and the ocean currents.
That sounds intense.
And then what did we bike? I think we biked like, 16 or 25 miles or something. And then it was, I think, a 3-mile run, which again, I mostly walked.
What were the thoughts because it sounds like you had thoughts of something is not right and I need to push through this. So what were those? What was that like, kind of holding both of those things and then making the decisions for yourself?
Well, the thoughts are, there's no way I'm quitting. I mean, probably one of the downsides of working in a skilled nursing facility is so long is you see a lot of people at the end of their life. When they've lost the function of their minds, they've lost the function of their bodies. And I'm like, this is not going to be me, especially at my age. I am not going to be bedridden. I'm not going to be on a wheelchair, at least not at this point in my life. I'm going to fight. I want my kids to see me growing up being strong, not being someone who gives up. So it's basically not quitting. Believe in yourself. Just get to the next piece. You think very short term. One more stroke. Get up this hill, whether you have to walk or not. You just get up this hill with your eye on the finish line.
Yeah. So that sounds like having big long-term goals, because training for a triathlon of any size is a larger long-term goal. And then the short term of one more stroke, one more step. Right.
It's always been a dream of mine to do an Ironman triathlon. And the great thing about the triathlons is you can literally be 75, 80 years old. There are 75, 80-year-old people doing the Ironman Hawaii triathlon and other Ironmans. It's a sport that you can do for the rest of your life. So I love it. I mean, you're not going to play football when you're 80 years old.
Fantastic. So you really tapped into that athlete side of you to kind of cope essentially and manage the emotional and physical, mental component of all of the, past trauma that you had, and then the physical limitations. And I guess, would you call it a limit? Like this, the impact that had on you. There was it limited you, and then you used it to empower yourself.
Yeah, it's basically turning a disability into an ability. And I would say the other thing with that is when you grow up having issues of complex PTSD, you become emotionally numb. And there was a lot of emotional numbness, especially once I had these injuries. Because when I had the kids, that knocked me out of my emotional numbness quite a bit, because they're amazing. You have kids, you know how amazing it is to have children. And then sometimes life throws all these, because life was super heavy. But when this happened, then the emotional numbness comes back, because you're like, I don't know how I can get through this. I literally do not know how I am going to get through this. And when you jump into a freezing cold ocean and have waves battering you, it knocks some of that numbness out of you. You feel alive again. And so constantly seeking those things that make me feel alive.
Really great. Tapping into, when do I feel most alive? What creates that kind of aliveness in you as a sort of physical not physical therapy, but physical therapy to wake yourself up and bring yourself into the present moment. You can't be in any other moment other than I am right here, right now with these freaking waves and going toe to toe with the waves. That's really cool.
Well, not only that, but I have, believe it or not, even though I've been a swimmer since I was a little kid, I am terrified. And, where we live, there's a system of aqueducts where they kind of regulate the water level. And most people don't swim in there because they think it's kind of gross. But there are a handful of people like me who will swim and train in there because it's amazing. There are no lane lines. There's no one else in there usually except you. But it's also completely black because in order to control some of the algae, they put a dye in there. So you're swimming in this area that's seawater and it's completely black and it's terrifying. So I'm terrified of the water. So imagine being in this wetsuit, terrified of the water, and then just getting in anyway. Like so terrified that I'd be walking to the water and I would be nauseous, refusing to admit that this is internal dialogue of terror.
It sounds like you walk like this tightrope of, I am a complete and total badass and I can do anything I put my mind to. And also, I have all of this shit that is coming up at the same time that I'm saying I am doing this. And you're like walking this tightrope of, I'm going to do it, but I know it is all there underneath me.
Well, there's this great saying, and I actually have a plaque that I bought myself to put my medals on, which says, she believed she could, so she did. And I have it hanging next to my bed to just remind me, I just have to believe. And that's why I wanted to become a belief coach, because that's really the bottom line, is you have to believe in yourself. So on my journey of continuing to believe in myself and believe in the future, it feels great when you coach other people to do that too.
And you're a walking, testimony to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, having that belief is like, if you don't believe that it's even possible, if you're going in with an excuse right away or anything like that, 100% it's not going to be possible.
Right. And how many people, when they get an injury, they use it as an excuse to stop. But one of the great things about living in the Bay Area is you see so many creative people. You see people on bicycles that have become tricycles where you can sit like really low to the ground, almost like a big wheel, an adult version of a big wheel. You see people with all kinds of attachments for other people who can't bike. I've seen people who have created a wheelchair in front of the bike or behind the bike so that someone who isn't able to ride a bike, literally, can go on a bike ride. I've seen people, I don't know if you've seen those bikes that are kind of like an elliptical machine where you don't actually pedal, but they're like these long platforms and you put your foot on it and you're just kind of cycling like you're on an ellipse, but it's a bicycle. So many creative things in the Bay Area.
Yeah, which gives inspiration because they have belief and creativity, and those two things together, that is where you step into the possibility versus the limitation versus the, kind of, I have no options type of thinking, that kind of fixed way of thinking to the, hey, what options do I have?
Yeah, I remember seeing on YouTube the video of a man, his son could not move, had no motor function. And he decided he wanted to get his son out. So he actually does triathlons with his son. When he's running or biking, his son is in a wheelchair attached to him. He's running, pushing the wheelchair, or he's biking, pulling the wheelchair. And then when he's swimming, his son floats on some sort of a device next to him that he pulls or behind him or something. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty inspirational that you can really do anything you put your mind to. You just have to keep remembering that.
Yeah, keep remembering that. And you remember it by having something next to your, where you see it all the time. And that's something that's really important. If this is something that you struggle with, is having that continual reminder to bring it top of mind, because life gets busy and crazy. And if you're feeling that sort of overwhelm of stress, physical pain, mental pain, all the things that come with that, it can be hard to remember. So setting yourself up in a way that either you have people around you or plaques around you, or I have reminders on my phone, whatever that looks like, making sure that you're infusing that into your life.
Right. And have a good coach and a good therapist on your team.
Yes. I love therapy. Like, I always tell people, like, kids should be born and they should come with a therapist and a pediatrician. Like, it should just be what you start
and a
life
coach.
out with. And a coach. Yes. Yes, exactly. It's so important to have, I call it my pit crew, and have that and have those people in your corner. So what lessons have you learned from this experience?
Be creative, adapt, never give up, always have hope, always have belief in yourself. It's really about mindset, resilience, and hope. Also find the healers. Find the healers and the helpers who are going to refuse to let you be a victim, remind you that you're a badass, and just keep doing one step at a time.
All right. Last question I ask everyone. Share your number one life hack or tip that has helped you save time, energy, or resources.
That one's super easy. Hire a professional life coach. Hire a professional life coach. All professionals have coaches. They all do. And one of my favorite podcasters right now is Rich Litvin. And he reminds people, for most of history, coaching went under a different name. It was called leadership. Coaching is just leadership. And we've morphed it into this term, life coaching, mindset coaching, but you're basically just leading people. So when you hire a coach, they're going to hold you to a higher standard. They're going to help you achieve your results faster and more fun.
Oh, I like that. More fun.
Yeah.
And faster. That is 100%. I mean, I struggled through the first 10 years until I got into coaching and hired coach, and I realized like, oh, I can have somebody who's already read all these things and done all these things support me. And that is one of the benefits of having a coach, is you get to tap in to all of the things that they have read and consumed, and all the education and things like that. And everybody that they've also worked with is a huge value.
Right. Everybody at the top level has coaches. Both Super Bowl teams have multiple coaches. All the top tennis players, they have coaches. Every team in the World Cup has multiple coaches. CEOs, executives, they all have coaches to help them do their business. So why don't we have life coaches? It doesn't mean we don't live life. You don't need a coach to live life. But most people who are successful, they want a coach because they know it can take them farther, faster, and more fun. And especially when you add adversity to the game, it'll help you be a badass instead of a victim.
Awesome. Carla, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
I'm so glad you asked. InfuseYourFuture.com is one way. My email address is infuseyourfuture@aol.com. But head over to my website, see what I'm up to. Just reach out. If you don't see a program on there that you're super interested in, but you want to work with me, email me, InfuseYourFuture, and we'll set something up. I always give a complimentary 45-minute coaching session to anyone that wants to see what it's like to work with me. So it's a no-brainer. At the end of the day, you're going to get a valuable 45 minutes, an interesting conversation with zero pressure to work with me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Carla, for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks so much for giving me the opportunity.
I so much appreciate every review that I get, and to encourage you to give them, because they are so important to the growth of this podcast and allowing me to serve more women and reach more people. I have an offer for you. So each month, I'm going to be drawing a name of someone who leaves a written review on the podcast, and you will be entered to win one of my online programs, the Fitness Accelerator, the Nutrition Starter Kit, and the Empowered Transformation Level 1. So anyone who leaves a written review each month, at the end of the month, I'll be drawing a name, and you will get access to that program. Thank you so much to everyone who takes the time to leave a review. It does help grow this podcast, and I appreciate it so much. Spirit of a Badass is a Lit Path Studios podcast and is produced by Jamie Gale and Alecia Jacobson. Music by Shane Ivers. We'll be back with another inspiring interview. Until then, keep your spirits high and your energy badass.